Welcome to Crossroads, week number 2 of technology. I'm here with hopefully a new friend. Maybe someday I'll be able to call you a friend. Yeah. You're not one yet. Maybe by the end of today, Andy Crouch, how are you?
Doing great. Happy you're in my house.
I'm happy to be in your house, and we're going to have some fun in your house in just a moment. But before we do, give me a brief just bio of you before we get into this talk.
Yeah, I've spent my life serving the kingdom of God in various ways. Campus ministry for 10 years, journalism for about 15 years, and now I work with entrepreneurs who want to make a difference in the world through their businesses and their organizations. And along the way, I have ended up writing books. So, yeah.
A great book he wrote this summer that has impacted me greatly, Strong and Weak, really, really solid and good. So anyway, we're talking about technology. You gave a talk that I thought was just fantastic, brilliant. We've had some other people engage with it at a conference. It was just fantastic. We tried to get Andy to come to Crossroads. He couldn't make it, but we thought, hey, hold on, technology enables us to actually take that exact talk we saw and actually bring it to all of Crossroads. So we're going to do that. One thing I want you to address before we get into it, there's some lingo for those of us who might not be as steeped in the truths of the Bible that might be over some folks' heads. One I want you to just talk about for a moment, Sabbath rest. What is Sabbath rest?
Yeah, so Sabbath is this Hebrew word that describes the 7th day of the week. The reason we have a 7-day week is because of the Jews who got it from God's revelation of himself. Ultimately from creation, God rests on the 7th day of his own work, and then sets that as a pattern for everything in creation, especially people and everyone who depends on people. So Sabbath rest is the practice of most fundamentally, a weekly rhythm where you work 6 days and then you have a 7th day not working, resting. But it also has, it's not just weekly, I think it has kind of it's the idea of a rhythm in your life of work and rest.
Yeah, so if I was to have Sabbath rest, that would mean that I have a life that is what?
Not always on, not always working, not always producing, not always doing the things that give us significance, but instead just receiving, feeling gratitude, resting, literally. I mean, naps are a great thing to do on the Sabbath day, but also time with other people, just anything that's not kind of productive, self-providing work.
Great. Well, I want to have you explain a bunch of other things because you do an amazing job for it. Here we go. Let's take a look at your talk right now.
So we have to reckon with something that's happened in the span of a single lifetime, not my lifetime, but my parents' lifetime, about 70 years. And here's the way I'd put it. We have always had tools as human beings, but now we have devices. So tools, which human beings have always had, they're one of the human universals, cultural universals, are things that extend human capacities in some way. But they require a certain amount of skill, effort, attention, or commitment to get their benefits. Devices are the new thing. They give us, at least sometimes, everything that tools gave us, but without requiring skill, effort, or risk. So I could give you a couple examples. I could talk about cultivating the earth and how we started with the tools of, shovels and spades, just very simple hand tools. Then we figured out how to make those into a plow and attach them to an animal with the additional strength an animal brings. Then you get a tractor, which is a machine tool, you could say, but it still requires a lot of skill to use, as I learned when I was nearly thrown off my grandfather's tractor, learning to drive it when I was 6 years old. But now we have GPS tractors. And I met a farmer who drives one of these, except drive is not quite the right word, because he takes his Kindle books with him, and the tractor just goes up and down the furrows of this massive multi-hectare farm while he gets to read all day as his tractor does the work. That's the kind of device. Let me give you another picture of this, though. Just came up this week. Suppose that you wanted to take all these beautiful ingredients, apple, kale, pineapple, lemon, baby spinach, and create a really tasty smoothie out of them. You could use some tools of knives and strainers and squeezers and so forth. Or you could buy this new thing, I guess it's called the juicero. The juicero pulverizes all those things ahead of time for you, puts them into this pack. It's like the Keurig of juices. And you just close this little door and push that button, and out comes a kind of slimy green sludge for which people apparently will pay a lot of money. And this is where technology wants to go. A single beautiful button that will cost you $700 and then $35 every other week for subscription to the little juice packs. How would I describe this? I describe it as the ultimate movement from tools to devices, but beyond that to what I'd call easy everywhere, which is the dream of the technological world. The device paradigm, you might say, says your life can be easy everywhere. It can just work. It's the foundation of Arthur C. Clarke's famous little aphorism: every sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And magic is the idea that I could just push a button and get what I want. A world where to have what I want, I don't need skill, don't need effort, don't need attention, don't need risk, just a button. Now, what people sometimes say about technology is they say, well, technology isn't good or bad, it's just neutral. And I understand what we're trying to say when we say that, but I don't think it's right if you think of neutral as being like a car that's in neither drive nor reverse and is just waiting to go wherever you want. Technology wants to go somewhere. It has a drive toward easy everywhere. As a Christian, I don't think I want to say, actually, that things are neither good nor bad. I don't think there's anything neutral in all of creation, certainly not culture. It's meant to be very good. But of course, we know that when we distort it and use it based on distorted pictures of God and distorted pictures of God's image bearers, it becomes not good. So the real question we ought to ask about this easy everywhere world of technology is, what is it very good for? And what is it not good for? So I have a couple ideas for you. I think technology, in the sense of easy everywhere access to a kind of effortless power, is very good for production. It's not so good for creation. It's a great way, once you've created something, to extend it. So I'm giving a talk right now that I created, and I'm being assisted in all kinds of ways by technology. But technology actually, that wasn't that much help in creating this talk. Another way to put this is technology is very useful at expressing human capacities, but it's not very good at all at forming human capacities. Because actually, technology did nothing to form me into the kind of person who would have something to offer you in these 18 minutes. In fact, because I'm so easily distracted and infatuated with technology's promise of easy everywhere, I did a kind of rough conservative estimate. I would estimate that technology has robbed me conservatively of several thousand hours of real creation that I've spent instead in various forms of distraction. When I was supposed to be doing the slow, patient, creative work of making something that's difficult work, instead I let easy everywhere give me a simulation of real life. One more thing I think it's good at: very good for leisure, not so good for rest. Rest for biblical people comes from this idea of Sabbath. And Sabbath is the rest on the other side of creative work. When you press the button on the juicero, you've done so little. I mean, how could you celebrate what you've done and rest from that demanding activity of pushing that button? Like, there's nothing to celebrate, right? But if you had managed to garden all those things, by the way, there is no place on the planet where you can have an apple, a lemon, kale, spinach, and pineapple all in the same place. But if you could do that, and you worked the ground, and you harvested them, and then you split them open with a knife, and then, mix them together, that would be a Sabbath moment. You only get Sabbath if you have creative work. Otherwise, you just have leisure. There's another dimension to Sabbath that I think is even deeper and more challenging for us. Remember this Sabbath instruction and the unique way in which the commandment for Sabbath given to the people of Israel specifies this: on the seventh day, you shall not do any work. Your son or your daughter, your male or female slave, your livestock, even your livestock can't work on the Sabbath, or the alien resident in your towns. True Sabbath, by definition, means rest for everyone in the economic system. But that cannot happen in our world of easy everywhere. For me to enjoy this technology, someone else has to work. You can think of it a little bit like if you watched Downton Abbey back when it was a good television series and became a kind of wacky television series and then ended. Remember, there was the upstairs of leisure, where a privileged group of people got to enjoy wonderful, beautiful things in great leisure. But there had to be a downstairs of a lot more people doing the work. There is a huge downstairs to our world of easy everywhere. And it is not easy downstairs. Downstairs, people are mining the raw materials and rare earth minerals needed for our devices. Downstairs, people right now are keeping the power grid on, the internet up. Downstairs, people are taking apart the devices that we've discarded, filtering the images we would never want to see in our social media stream. There is a huge amount of toil in the easy everywhere world, and because easy everywhere has to be on all the time, there is never a break, there is never rest for all, and so in the biblical sense, there is no Sabbath, because there is no biblical Sabbath for anyone if there is not Sabbath for everyone in the economic community. So there's no contradiction between the two following statements. We have more leisure than anyone else in history, and we have less Sabbath rest than anyone else in history. This has implications for all kinds of spaces. I think anywhere where you want to be creative and any environment you want to be formative, you need to really ask, is technology actually good for this? But I've been thinking for the past year about family, and so I want to spend the last half of this talk talking about how this affects family. And so think about this. Family is where our creative capacities are first recognized. Other people may never frame anything you've ever drawn or painted, but I bet your parents did. Or somebody in your family said, "You are a creator, that was good." Family should be the place of deep Sabbath rest in our lives, in relationship with one another and with God. And it is undoubtedly the most formative context most of us will experience. What would happen if easy everywhere took over that environment? Well, it would make us productive at home, very productive, but not very creative. It would give us tons of leisure at home. There's a lot of Netflix to get through. Walking Dead, I've heard, is really good this season, but no real rest. And it would rob us of family's formative power, the power to form us into persons who have wisdom and courage, character, skill, and capacity for love. My wife and I should say I'm married to a scientist. She works with very high technology in her lab, but it's all tools. She knows that science is hard. Technology is easy, science is hard. And we stumbled into a few commitments that really helped us. It took us a while to realize even what we're doing, but we realized that we made some commitments about space. We want to create more than we consume. And we want our kids to think that way. We're creators first, consumers second. So we decided we'd fill the places in our home where we spent the most time with things that were not devices. Things that rewarded creativity, energy, effort, skill, attention. So there's a grand piano on our first floor that we spent the kids' college fund on because any kid can go to college, but not many kids get to grow up with a grand piano, right? So a clear, good trade. Craft table with all kinds of painting supplies right in front of the window so you get good natural north-facing light. A fireplace, lots of books, a kitchen stocked with raw materials and cooking implements, not with juiceros. Because we want our space to be a place that rewards skill and that kids realize there's something to learn here about how to be a human being. We made decisions about time because we wanted Sabbath in our lives. So we decided that 1 hour a day, for us it's dinner time, 1 day a week, for us it's Sunday, and at least 1 week a year, many years it's 2 weeks, we would turn off every glowing rectangle and every visible device and just enjoy a rhythm of life that involves both productive work and device-free rest. And we decided fundamentally every time we bring something into our home, we're going to have to ask the formation question. Because we are here, and we want our kids to know this, to develop wisdom and courage. That's our goal. And we have to ask of every activity, every device, is this going to help us develop wisdom and courage? Because that's what we do together. That's what family is for. It kind of worked. We've got teenagers now. This is the only good picture I have because teenagers are so darn self-conscious, you can never get them to just be happy and smiling. So here we are, happy and smiling. Timothy and Amy, 20 and 17 now, are so grateful we lived in this quite radical way that it sometimes was extremely painful vis-a-vis their friends and even other families and other parents. And we all look very happy in this picture. If you knew the cost of this picture, if you knew the tears that I have seen on the face of every person in this picture, the depression that has been suffered at different times by every person, the anxiety, the conflicts, the long, protracted months or years long, in some ways, silence between different members, as well as the incredible intimacy, joy, and pride in one another that we can take at our best. This is a picture of my family. It's also a picture of a crucible, a very challenging environment in which I and 3 other people have been formed as a person. Anything really valuable in my life is the result to some extent of the way I've been formed by these 3 and by the extended family that I could show you pictures of and the family of origin in which I grew up. And when God wanted to act redemptively in history, God chose to work through a family. It did not require one bit of modern technology. There was no device, no easy everywhere in God's intervention. It was a family, first Abram and Sarah, that conflicted, fractious crucible of Israel. And then the church, the community that from the beginning has called one another brother and sister. Because even more than biological family, we in the church are meant to be present for one another in the intimate, formative ways, difficult ways that is necessary for the formation of persons. So our family has had the great gift of being not just part of our little biological nuclear family, but being part of the real family, the family that every family takes its name from, the church. And that means that other people have become part of our family. I could tell you so many stories, but an especially formative one was our friendship with David and Angie Sachs and their kids. Picture of them from a few years ago. A very formative friendship. They became far more formative on October 31st, 2011, when David received a diagnosis of terminal cancer, stage 4 cancer. And the next 16 months were full, in one sense, of technology. Medical technology that at great cost gave David another year of life. And a Facebook group called The Inner Circle that ended up with over 1,000 people in it, in which we all pursued the real life available to us and to David and to Angie and their kids in the crucible of suffering. It was a formative year because terminal illness is a crash course in wisdom and courage and being a person. And I think David would say, I think Angie would say, I know we would say, maybe the best year of our lives. In the last weeks of David's life, which were 4 years ago today, 4 years ago in April, a few of us were privileged to gather around his bed. All the devices had been disconnected. All the messages had been sent. And all we had to do was sing and pray and wait. And if there's one thing technology is no good for, it's being present. And that is what we most need as human beings, is for others to be present to us at our birth, at our death, and in all the moments of vulnerability in between. I don't know that we fully realize how much our modern technology is rooted in the ancient dead end of alchemy, the pursuit of the philosopher's stone, the doomed quest never to be fulfilled of finding a substance that if you had it, you could turn all metal to gold, easy wealth everywhere, and could have everlasting life, easy life everywhere, the button you could push to get the universe to do magic for you. It was a mirage. never existed, never will. And in one sense, our modern technology, for all its real power and all its real good, is a mirage as well. Because easy everywhere will come to an end for each of us. It will come to an end even for our technological world. And when it comes to its end, who will we be? Who will we have become? Will we have pursued real creativity, real rest, real intimacy, real wisdom and courage? That is the life I want. I want it for myself. I want it for my children. I want it for my children's children. But I need help choosing it, which is why I've been given family. And in God's plan, you are my family. Let's help one another choose real life together. Thank you.
So I ended up taking some good notes. One thing I've noticed, in the last 2 years, you've not gained any weight.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
You were just as felt as you were 2 years ago. Very, very impressive. This technology thing, this is really new. I mean, before the phone, before the cell phone, there was, I don't know, it's not too far back that was just the cotton gin, right? That was just 100, 150 years ago, something like that. So things are accelerating so quickly. So put your prophet hat on for a little bit here and just go in the future and say, if we've come this far, this fast in the last several decades, what could the future look like for us as people who want to follow Christ?
So I think this is very important. We are so early in this story. We are maybe 100 years in. I mean, when my parents were born, who are in their 70s now, almost none of this technology existed. A few things like the cotton gin, but almost nothing. And it's accelerating. And up till now, what we've mostly been able to shape is the external world. We've been able to, change the way we harvest food, change the way we move, automobiles, motorcycles. But the next frontier of technology is actually our own bodies and what it is to be human. And that is going to accelerate at the same exponential pace that it's already been accelerating. And we're going to be able to intervene in human life. And what are we going to do when we intervene? Well, what's the promise of technology? Easy everywhere. What would it be like to have bodies and human life that's easy? Well, that's going to require getting rid of a bunch of what we see as deficits or things that make it hard to be human. Now that may sound good, like, oh good, and by the way, I'm glad I have glasses. That's technology, makes it easier for me to see. So some of this is actually totally good, that we can remedy some deficits in what it is to be human. But let me tell you the shadow side of this. The nation of Denmark, for 2 years, has not had a child born in the nation of Denmark with Down syndrome. That is not because children haven't been conceived with Down syndrome. It's because we can now diagnose Down syndrome 100% in the womb. And in the nation of Denmark, every child in the womb who was diagnosed with that disorder was terminated before birth. And the newspapers in Denmark, after the first year, celebrated that Denmark was becoming a Down syndrome-free society. Now that's the promise of technology. What's the idea behind that? It's difficult to be a person with Down syndrome. Well, if you've ever met someone with Down syndrome, actually they love life and they love other people.
They do. They actually smile a lot more than those of us who have six-figure salaries and the latest tablet.
They are evidently more satisfied, more relational, more capable of love than typical, neurotypical human beings are. So it's not about the difficulty for that child. It really is about the difficulty for society. So think about this paradox, that something that has brought real difficulty into the life of a family and a community, which these kinds of disorders do bring difficulty, has also been the source of deepest blessing. This is a total violation of the paradigm of technology, which says difficult is bad, easy is good, easy is better, let's make it easy. And our culture, I think, unless we have a real reversal, which could happen, is going to keep going down the road of easy. And Christians are going to have to say, no, we're going to keep going down the road of difficult but good, hard but good, because real life is hard but good. And this is why, in the long run, we are, I think, almost literally going to look different from our neighbors. We will have children in our community, in our Christian communities, and we'll welcome children from others that aren't seen in the wider culture because they're hard to care for or they pose certain extra challenges. But we're also going to be holding on to a kind of blessing and abundance of life that we can see doesn't come with the easy everywhere life. The easy everywhere life is making the West, the modern world, more anxious, more stressed, more suicidal, more depressed. It's not, it turns out easy is not better. But that's what technology wants to give you, is easy.
All right, at the risk of offending my host who's allowed me into his home, you're starting to sound like the middle-aged white guy you are. You're starting to sound like a guy that's just, doesn't like stuff like this. You would prefer paper books. I prefer Kindle. You just seem like maybe you're trying to pick some battles on old-fashioned things that you like, when the rest of us are a little more hip. We might like to actually read real books and get real knowledge without killing trees.
Yeah.
So what do you say to that?
Well, first, I love technology. So we haven't talked about this a lot, but I'm a total geek. Every 5 years, I try to learn a new programming language. I love any aspect of tech I find fascinating, and I use all of it. And I use all these devices. But I want to use them as tools, not as devices. That is, things that extend my capacity, not as things that replace or diminish my capacity. And call me nostalgic if you want to, but I'm just looking around and I don't see us getting happier. I don't see us getting healthier physically or spiritually. And so I'm just asking, what's going wrong?
The most technologically advanced country has a life expectancy that's decreasing, going down. The last stats I saw on happiness, I don't think we cracked the top 10 worldwide.
And we're worse off than our parents were, than our grandparents were, even though our lives are easier. So I am not at all opposed. Technology is, again, very good. But it's only very good when it's hooked up to becoming human, to being a flourishing human being. And the way to know whether it's helping you flourish or not, I think there's kind of two tests. One is the dependence test, and that is, do I feel anxious when I don't have this thing supplying me with entertainment, with a sense of worth, satisfaction, and I'm not meant to be dependent on some external thing for that, but I often can become dependent in that way. And the other big test, really, of any idol, any false god, any substitute for the good life, is what's happening to my relationships. Are my relationships getting deeper as I use this thing, or are they getting shallower? Are they getting thinner? Is it getting harder to have relationships? And I absolutely believe there's a way to use all these devices. I use all of them, 6 days a week. 1 day a week I don't, but 6 days a week I use them and love them and benefit from them. But I've had to learn, and through a lot of painful discovery, what are the disciplines that allow me to use these devices not as substitutes for being human, but as extensions of really, truly being human.
What's also really good about being here, technology has afforded us the ability to bring this message to all of Crossroads instead of just having you stand at a Crossroads location, is that we actually get to see what you're like in real life. We get to see if your message actually matches your life. So show me around your technology-enhanced or technology-free house.
Yeah, so here we are. It's not a big house. It's like 30 by 20 feet. And our choice on this first floor was to absolutely minimize the devices.
So just some things I noticed here. First of all, you are not anti-technology.
Yeah,
you have a Nest.
Oh my gosh, I love this thing.
Yeah.
Right? I love being able to turn up and down, easy everywhere. There it is. Right, so we are not anti-tech. You'll see, there you can spot technology on this floor, but not much. And the big thing you'll notice that is not here is a TV.
Yeah, right. I got a big TV over my fireplace. You don't. What do you have?
We have just one picture. We actually commissioned this from a friend of ours who's a painter. My wife's grandfather died, left us a little bit of money. We said, let's remember him with something. And this is what we remember him with. It's a painting of blessing, an older man blessing a younger man. Almost everything here was made by people we know. So the art is all by people we actually are friends with, have supported in some way. So no TV. Instead, there's other people's creativity, and then there's places for us to be creative. We took the kids' college savings and put it into this piano. This is the most expensive thing in the house. So our kids grew up with this instrument sitting here, taking up a huge amount of space.
Right, you could have a smaller synthesizer or a smaller keyboard easily.
But there's something, it's so beautiful, just the thing itself is beautiful, then the sound it makes can be beautiful, and there's nothing a 5-year-old can do that will harm this thing. And so they can, you know, just hit it, but then they can also hear Dad actually play it, and they start to realize, oh, music is not just something you press play on, but it's actually something we make.
Well, and you're not anti-technology, because I'm looking in your, you've got everything in your kitchen. I have my kitchen, and you've got downstairs. You're loaded up with tech stuff.
So there is technology in the house, just not in the place where we spend the most time. It's just at the edges rather than at the center. And you have to intentionally go use it rather than just having it be the default, oh, let's see what's on TV or whatever.
Something is being stolen from us, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, completely.
And we've got to take control of our life to flourish. It's been really rich, really, really powerful. I think this is one of the areas that the church, believers, are trailblazers in.
Totally.
You know, and the rest of culture is not going to help us here at all, because the rest of culture is actually wired against making holistic changes in our lives for this. And you've done an amazing job prompting us a little bit. Any last thing you would say before we move on with our weekend?
So I'd say if you really take this seriously, you're going to be different, and sometimes different is hard. I mean, sometimes kids call it weird. Sometimes your neighbors call it weird. But we're going to be different. It's so much better. Life where, and you know, again, you don't have to get rid of all the devices, but we just use them differently, and we're going to reclaim and restore the kind of good life that we are made for. And we can make a difference in our culture on this. There is maybe no area where our neighbors, the people we work with every day, the people we are with in our neighborhoods are more unsettled, unsure, feel like something's not right. And we can absolutely make a difference in how our whole culture approaches this. And that means we can be part of flourishing, not just for ourselves and our families and our communities, but really the whole nation and the whole way this story goes. We can be part of a different story.
Great.